Hello, my name is Jackson Weber, and this is my science fair project on dicing it up, a science fair experiment on probability. My question and purpose for my science fair experiment was how does the number of sides in a dice affect the probability of dice rolling? And the purpose of the experiment was to see how rolling different types of dice while keeping all the other variables the same can affect the sum of the roll of the dice. The research plan for my science fair experiment was that how rolling two different types of dice while changing the variables 3 times can affect the sum of the roll in the dice. This is very important information for the future so that people can learn to predict events better under different conditions while practicing and probability outcomes. Probability is a vital tool in mathematics, and it is necessary to have an understanding of the nature of chance in order to be a well-informed statistician and scientist. My research question is what variables can affect the outcome of the sum of the roll. My goal was to find out which variables can get us closer to the sum of 15 or higher. My variables and hypothesis for the science fair was this listed below. The independent variable is the amount of rolls in each experiment, and the dependent variable are the sum of the rolls of the dice, and the controls and the constants are the dice I'm using for each experiment. The constant is the hand in the cup, which I will be using in both experiments. The hypothesis is that the sum of 15 or higher will occur most often with the 3 10-sided dice. My materials for my science fair experiment was that I used the 3 10-sided standard size plastic dice from TechUnite, and then I used the 5 6-sided standardized plastic dice from Bicycle brand dice. I used a wooden coffee table as my control, and a leather-bound basket with 7.5-inch height sides. I used a backgaming cup, a hand, a pencil to record my data and to do the experiment, and a 4 data collection sheets of paper, which I used. These are my procedures for the science fair experiment, and these are the steps on how to do it. So first, you want to do the experiment whatever time that you please, and you can use it in any room that you want, living room or whatever. You can do it for a span of 3 days, and you can use step 2 on day 1, step 3 on day 2, and etc. You have to use the hand and cup alternate and the 6 and 10-sided dice alternate. Do these steps in order so that you can get the best results possible. And here are my data and graphs for my science fair experiment. This shows all the rolls I did and the outcome of the sum for all 200 rolls. This is another graph from my science fair experiment, and it shows the sum of the number of 15 or higher being portrayed by the line for the 5 6-sided dice for left-handed, right-handed, left-handed cup, and right-handed cup, and the independent and dependent variable. This is the same graph, but for the 3 10-sided dice for the left hand, left-hand cup, and the right-hand cup, and everything else. You can kind of see how it's significantly lower than the 5 6-sided dice. And it's interesting because while the 3 10-sided dice has more sides, but there are more of the 5 6-sided dice. Once all the data and graphs were collected, I analyzed the data. And I found out that after the rolls, I found out that the probability of rolling the sum of 15 or higher with the 5 6-sided dice was 77%. But for the 3 10-sided dice, it was only 39%, meaning that the sum of 15 or higher, the roll of the sum of 15 or higher for the 5 6-sided dice occurred 40%, almost 40% more than the 3 10-sided dice. And my conclusion is that after conducting the experiment and rolling the dice, there is a much higher probability of rolling the sum of 15 or higher with the 6-sided dice and with my right hand. In my conclusion, I found out that the experiment was conducted to find out the probability of getting the sum of 15 or higher when rolling the either 5 6-sided dice or 3 10-sided dice. Unfortunately, the hypothesis was not supported based on the data. My hypothesis was that the 3 10-sided dice would roll the sum of 15 or higher more times than the 5 6-sided dice. But that was not the case after looking at the data. During the experiment, there was a bit of inconsistency with the rolls, with some using more power and some being slightly higher in height than others. And I could have improved it a bit more based on the inconsistencies. And because of this, the project data is important to the world and it should not be varied. And this helps people become more knowledgeable and efficient about making better decisions. If this experiment could be conducted, the next phase would be to find out the probability of a higher or lower card in a deck of cards. The abstract of the science fair was basically reflecting on what I did. So the purpose of the science fair project was to find out how rolling 2 different dice and getting to sum of 15 or higher affects the probability of a certain event. Why this topic was chosen was to help the whole world better understand the probability of an event happening. The research question asked was, how does this experiment better help the world better understand probability? And the research was conducted using sources focused on probability to prove my research question. During the experiment, there were 2 types of dice used: 6-sided dice and 10-sided dice. There are 5 6-sided dice and 3 10-sided dice used to both maximize the number of sides for both types of dice at 30. The hypothesis was that the 3 10-sided dice would roll more of the sums 15 or higher than the 5 second dice. The hypothesis was determined by the data of the experiment. The experiment was conducted by rolling the 5 6-sided dice and 3 10-sided dice 100 times with left hand with the cup, right hand with the cup. Rolling the dice happened in a 7.5-inch basket with felt interior. After each roll, the data was written down. There were 2 data sheets, 1 sheet for 3 10-sided dice and 1 sheet for the 5 6-sided dice. And after the rolls were finished, the data was analyzed, and the hypothesis proved to be wrong significantly based on the data of the experiment. Thank you for viewing and listening to my science fair experiment. My name is Jackson Weber.